Oh, and say, I want you to all see something.
Just how important is ad creative to the performance of driver recruiting campaigns?
It's all about understanding who you're marketing to.
I feel marketers, they want to make themselves the hero of that story that they're crafting.
You always, always, always want to align back to your user.
All right, welcome back to Digging Deeper. This is episode 5, and today we're gonna talk about ad creative, which quintessentially is my favorite topic.
I don't care.
We brought in an expert, Kim Walker, to talk about ad creative and what really works, and she did a whole presentation on this at R Squared. Kim, what's your title? I never can remember people's titles.
My title is Director of Digital Marketing.
There you go. So let's kick it off. Kim?
David?
How important is ad creative to the performance of driver recruiting campaigns?
It is everything in terms of a way to get your foot in the door, a way to reestablish who you are, and let your target audience know that you are there to answer the question that they are asking at that exact moment, at that time.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's like targeting has come a long way, and it makes our lives way easier. But just because I can get my message in front of the right person, if that message, if they don't care about what they see, then I mean, what's the point?
Exactly. It's your first impression.
Right.
It is your way of saying, hey, I have a reason to earn your attention.
Right.
This is why you need to pay attention to me.
Where are we getting this info on why we say we believe what we believe?
With Randall-Reilly, I believe it always comes back to information. It always comes back to data. Part of what forms our opinions on what works for ad copy is we take the time to ask our audience what works for them. So really what it comes down to, more than anything else, in terms of what is indicating and forming our opinions on what works and what doesn't work, is that ultimately we're putting in the work on the back end to get to know our audience.
Right. And you know, people are inherently self-centered.
Man, I'm pretty.
And so that cuts in two directions. One, the way you get people's attention is playing to that, but you also have to fight against that, I feel like, when you're writing ads, because I think that self-centeredness in people and that narcissism naturally there makes people write ads that would appeal to themselves rather than appeal to the audience that they're trying to reach.
It's all about understanding who you're marketing to.
Right.
Now, if you happen to be in your own target demographic, awesome.
Right.
You don't get any easier than that.
Right.
But in our case, many times we're not actually behind the wheel.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, even ads, you're essentially crafting a story in some way. Even though it's a very short story, you're creating a story. And every story has a protagonist or hero. And where most, I feel, marketers, and regardless of industry, mess up is that they want to make themselves the hero of that story that they're crafting rather than you should make the person you're marketing to make them the hero of the story. So instead of framing everything as like, I'm going to do this for you and I'm going to make your life wonderful, it's like, if I give you these tools, you have the power to make your life wonderful. I don't know if I said this earlier, but Kim did a very in-depth presentation on this for R Squared, one of our client events. And so in the presentation, she had what she called the 2.5 V's of ad creative. So tell us a little bit about the 2.5 V's of ad creative.
The 2.5 V's are visual, verbal, and relevancy. There's your 0.5 V.
So let's talk about the first aspect of that, visual, right? The first V was visual. Yes. So tell us what we need to know about the visual aspects of ad creative. Where do we start?
You want to take the time to take some really great pictures, to take some video, and you can send us all of your completely edited videos, or you can send us B-roll footage. We can do so much with all of the little bits and pieces that you can send us. But if you don't provide those to us, we're a little bit lost at sea, right? We're going to be dependent on stock photos. We're going to have to go to your corporate site. So in terms of what you can provide to us, the more the better. If you know that you haven't sent us pictures in a year, then we're still using pictures of potentially your older trucks. And again, that may not translate well when we're pushing ads out there and talking about, hey, we've got new trucks, or we'll put you in the best equipment. All of these things have to come together to provide a seamless image that makes sense to the driver.
What are the big cardinal sins that you see our clients / fleets make when it comes to, hey, give me some visual elements for your campaign? What are kind of the big ones you see?
Lack of creative, just in general. We get one picture, it's okay, it's not especially attractive, and that's all we get.
Ad creative are such a huge component to the performance of your campaign and how many leads you're getting from drivers, that it is worth your time and definitely worth the ROI to spend extra time to get great creative to your vendors.
The ad creative is not the goal. The goal is whatever you're trying to get with your marketing.
Very good point.
So are your drivers worth the time, right? Are your, our seats, our butts and seats worth the time? Are the least expensive butts and seats worth the time?
Yeah. It's almost like shopping for a hotel. Like, how much do you base your decision on the pictures you see online when you're shopping for a hotel? Like,
So much.
There's so much that subversively you associate with a place or a company just by the quality of the photos. So obviously the visual impact is huge. Now let's move on to the second V, which is verbal. Tell me what I need to know about the verbal aspects of ad creative.
The words that you choose, the script that you use in the video, and the ad copy that you use, you have a very short opportunity to answer the question that the user is asking. So there are very specific answers that come with those questions. Primarily, have you ever applied for a job without knowing what it paid? I have not. I don't know many people that would, right? And so, in talking with some of our clients, sometimes they don't provide us with pay information immediately. And what we always ask is, can you provide any of this information? They said, well, is that really important? Absolutely. It is an employment ad. You want to provide the answer, but you also want to provide an eloquent answer.
Right.
And you have to approach from the angle of, what is your brand? Who are you? Like all of those things you can do with your visual, but even more so with your verbal, especially when it comes to understanding the motivations of people, right?
Right.
So the question is, how will I provide for my family?
Right.
It's by taking a look at this opportunity, right? And we could potentially pay you more. We'll get you a higher sign-on bonus. You'll get detention time pay, like all of those things. Again, answering the question that your user is having, that your user has.
Copy in ads is one where I feel like more than any other written medium, you really have to agonize over every word because you have such limited character space that it's worth the time to agonize over every single word. One thing I really like that you said there is you're talking about, you may think of it in terms of like, what are you paying? But the driver may be thinking of it in terms of, how do I support my family?
Yes.
Which is a great, when we think about if ad creative is essentially a story, then, well, that's the hook of your story right there is, I'm trying to support my family. I'm trying to save for my future, all that kind of thing, which all needs to be somehow encapsulated in that short amount of verbiage that you have.
What does what you're offering mean? What does it translate to in their lives?
What are the cardinal sins or the big faux pas that you see people make when it comes to copy?
So to me, one of the cardinal sins is forgetting that you're talking to a person.
Right.
So again, pointing back to those motivations, what does that increased pay rate mean to them? What could it mean?
Right.
What doors could it open? So you always have to go back to who is on the other end of this ad.
Right. One thing most stories begin with is something is wrong. Like if we think,
Yes.
Star Wars and the hero's journey and all that kind of stuff, it always begins with a call to adventure. So more times than not, when I'm writing ads, I'm thinking, what is my call to adventure? What is the negative thing that I'm calling on the audience to overcome? And that's a pretty easy thing to translate to a driver. There's so many obstacles and things that they're trying to overcome. And if you can frame the things, like there are certain things they want to know about home time, pay, whatever it is, you need to find a way to frame all of that in a short time that, attaches itself to the emotion that the driver's feeling.
What I like to look at is when we do driver surveys, and it's really interesting for me to note that what is very important to them is respect. And having that information that comes straight from them means that we can, again, craft the right message at the right time in the right place.
So now we've talked about the first two V's. We talked about how important great visual aspects are, and if you can do video, do video. We've talked about verbal, which is kind of what we're using for copy, or the actual words that are there.
That's right.
Although I guess you could look at it, instead of copy, you could look at, I think you have in here, or you may have said, it's also the script to your video.
That's right.
And then the point 5 V, which is relevancy or relevancy. What does that mean?
Without that final 0.5 B of relevancy, you could throw visual and verbal out the window. What is useful to the user? What does the user need at that moment in terms of, I have a question I need an answer to, I have a problem that you can solve for me. All of that goes back to crafting a marketing plan and writing ads that are highly relevant to the user.
It should be obvious, but when we say the user, we're talking about, in this case, the driver.
Yes. Your audience won't always be your clients won't always be your audience. Sometimes it will be both, but not always.
Right.
So yes, thank you for making that distinction.
Yep. So if we talk about the first two aspects, great visual, great verbal, but we have to make sure they're relevant to the person I'm talking to. How do we make our creative relevant?
So a lot of these questions I found really flow back to, again, who is our user?
Right. And we need to be as specific as possible, I would think.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
Not just drivers. It's like,
exactly.
What are they hauling? Where are they hauling?
Where should the driver be? Yes, exactly. So really, all of the things that we've actually said here, another way that you will often hear it is right time, right place, right message.
Mm-hmm.
So asking ourselves, who does the client need us to present in front of us, and how do we get there? So the way that we make our ads very relevant is we use the tools available to us in specific channels.
Right.
For making sure that we're targeting the right location. We are leveraging our audiences to make sure that we're targeting the right driver type, and that they're interested in whatever haul the client is needing them to haul.
Right. One thing I was just thinking about was, you said something earlier that I thought was really good. You talked about, people ask questions and they want to find the answers to those questions quickly. And a lot of times in marketing, I believe Andrew Davis talked about this, we kind of have this notion that we got to make everything shorter and shorter and shorter because people don't have long attention spans.
Ooh, shiny red ball.
That's
but
right.
Then again, they will binge watch Game of Thrones for 8 hours. So I think people have the attention spans, but they have an extremely low tolerance for time waste. And so you got to be relevant and get people their answers extremely quickly.
You make an interesting point about the marketplace of attention that we live in.
Right.
Because even going back to binge watching a TV show, what's the trade-off? The trade-off is that they're entertained, so they're willing to put in the time.
Yep.
So for what we're doing for marketing purposes, if they actually make it to our landing page, we need to have that information ready. This is actually why we don't recommend that we push them straight to a corporate page, because there's so much more information, and we're trying to really motivate them to pursue a very singular set of actions. Make a phone call or do a short form.
Right. How do we test out our ad creative to see if what we're doing is successful?
So very oftentimes we're doing testing in tandem with marketing efforts.
Right.
So when you do that, you have to find a happy medium, right? And that happy medium is really looking at the tools available to you in channels that you're wanting to test.
Right.
You want to tell them, using those testing tools, that I need to split my traffic down right down the middle, or I want to test this with 25% of my traffic.
Mm-hmm.
The key, though, is actually letting the channels work for you in that sense, okay?
Right.
Because testing on your own, you could have your 2 campaigns built out, and you could have them exactly the same and just tweak one little thing and say, okay, this is my test. But what you're not guaranteeing is that you're actually going to split the traffic in whatever ratio you need it to be split. So when people ask about testing, what I'm going to say is I still want you to start with your goal,
mm-hmm.
and then layer on your real-time requirements.
Okay.
Because what will happen is we have some clients who don't want to test. And so they just say, here's your new creative, use it. Well, if that creative actually performs more poorly than the old creative, we're a little bit at a loss, right? So what you'll find yourself doing is needing to backtrack a little bit. So you'll have to say, well, do we want to keep on with this new creative, or do we want to revert back to the old?
All right, so generally what we do at the end of these is I try to summarize everything we talked about. And then you tell me if I did a good job and can add anything you want. You essentially said that ad creative should be synonymous with marketing. It is marketing. It's understanding what makes your audience tick, what is interesting to them, what will actually make them, what will modify their behavior that best mirrors your goals. Now there are 3 main aspects to our ad creative that we need to think about. The first is visual. Video trumps everything, but make sure all photos are extremely high quality and high resolution. Make sure that you have lots of creative, because you can't, in this day and age, you can't run the same creative over and over and over. Make sure what you're doing, well, let's not get to the relevant part yet, because that's obviously 0.5. Our second V is verbal, which is essentially the message we're putting out. And we want to craft a story that aligns to the emotions of our audience, the drivers, while at the same time answering the questions that we know they will have. A big component of that, which you said, is like, I'm not even looking at a job if I don't know how much it pays. So let's make sure that they get that question. And then the 0.5 V is almost the umbrella that the first 2 V's sit in. It's how relevant is what you're putting forth. How relevant are the visuals? How relevant is the verbal aspects of your marketing? And it needs to answer the exact questions that your audience has. And the more specific you can be to the exact user you're trying to reach, the better. What would you add to that quick summary that I just did?
You always, always, always want to align back to your user. The more you know about your target audience, the more relevant your ads and your creative can be.
Well, I think that will conclude our time here for Digging Deeper. Thanks for joining us.
You're so welcome.
Be on the lookout. I was actually talking to them, the people that aren't here yet. But also, Kim, thank you for joining us.
Well, you are welcome.
Bye, everyone. And cut. Yep. I had something I was going to say there, and it completely went away from me. Anyway, continue.
Relevant.
Relevancy.
Yeah, relevancy.